to the Life and Listings podcast. I have Andy here. Hey, Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Jennifer, glad to be with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our conversation. I feel like we can go in a million different directions, but before we get started, tell everybody that's listening in a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Or Simple Numbers, simple-numbers.com is our website. But basically, we are real estate people, but we do bookkeeping and financial reporting for real estate agents, teams, and brokerages. And because I just think that there's, at least when I was growing my team, there was just such a miss for me on that, we felt there was a need in the marketplace to do that. So that's what we do.
Amazing. There is such a need, right? And so many people are always asking, who do you use for bookkeeping? Who does all of that stuff? And they'll go to someone that someone else recommended, but they don't know real estate. And I think that's what's so different because we're a mission-based model. It's so important to use someone that understands our crazy business. So we kind of decided we would talk about profitability, which I think is so important right now. We've got this shift in the market. We've got a lot of business changes, and we're hearing a lot of cut, a lot of changes. So let's dig into that. How do you start with a business? How do you start with a realtor so they can start understanding profitable?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and you're right. Profitability is key, and not because we do this all for the money, right? People kind of consider me the money guy with real estate, understanding money and real estate businesses and how they go together. And frankly, it's hard to admit, I don't even care about money. It's not about the money. Mm-hmm. It's about our responsibility as team leaders, as possibly leaders of our family, of leaders of ourselves. We are given the opportunity to be in a business that allows us to make a lot of money. Frankly, this is. I don't have a college degree. I barely made it out of high school, but I was able to build a successful real estate team, changed my life financially in other ways as well. But it wasn't ever about the money. It was about the fact that if I was going to take that role as a business owner, team leader, I had a responsibility to be profitable. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really the key here is we have to take that and realize that it's our responsibility. And if we don't, put the effort in and have the knowledge and understanding around profitability, then we're not doing, in my opinion, our job as the owner, team leader, person that runs the business. Mm-hmm. And I see it so often because I was that person running my real estate team. And for me personally, it kept me in production. It kept me selling real estate, having to sell real estate personally to pay for my team, pay for all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I had an economic model that didn't work. And then I was stuck in production. And that keeps me from doing what I needed to do, which was give my agents that business so that I could step into the role of really growing the team. So it's funny, we often think, I've heard people say this that we've worked with, we've done their books and, all their financial reporting. And they'll say, well, Andy, I'm not that worried about profitability. I just want my agents to make money. And if I do that, everything will be good. There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Like the old saying, I think it was Zig Ziglar said, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
True. But you have to have a model that if you do that, it still gets you what you want, which is profit and freedom.
Yeah.
And so if you don't, you're going to be stuck in production, which then keeps you from being able to give those deals to your team. You're kind of keeping those deals for yourself just to pay for the stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you can't do what you need to do to grow the business and really be that CEO. So I believe the economic model that you run has to be profitable, not so that you can go on a bunch of fancy vacations and drive a fancy car. Mm-hmm. Yes, that might come with it, but because you're responsible for your team and you're responsible to help them grow. And if you're not profitable, you can't do that. You're out selling real estate. And so I think that's why this is such an important topic.
It is really important because I'm hearing that a lot right now, right? Where we have a lot of team leaders that are either going back into production or their original plan is to get out of production. They're staying in, right? Because they're scared. They're scared with the way that the market's going right this second. So where would you have them start?
Yeah, I think the key, so let's start with this. The number one or one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they transition from agent to starting a team, mm-hmm. solo agent to starting a team, is they've set up their own personal lifestyle to call it lifestyle creep. As they're increasing their revenue as a solo agent, all of a sudden their lifestyle increases to some crazy level. Now they drive the fancy cars. They bought that giant house. They have the vacation property. Those are all great things. But when we do that as a solo agent and then we shift to being a team leader, now we're so dependent on extremely high profitability, because when we're solo agents, our costs are typically pretty low.
Yeah.
We don't have to buy all these leads necessarily or have all this staff, although we may have some. Our costs are typically pretty low, and we're not paying a bunch of agent splits on all these deals that they're doing. So our net profit is usually pretty high.
Yeah.
And we get used to that. And then all of a sudden we shift to being a team leader and everything gets expensive. And I've seen so many people get in and get out real quick.
Yeah.
And they give up because they're used to that high net income. Now, there's ways to work through that, but I think the key is to have the best option for success, or the best chance for success in shifting to really being a team leader, broker type person, owner, like entrepreneur minded real estate person, is to be very careful when things are good, that you don't let that lifestyle creep. You disrupt your ability to shift to that team. So that's number one. Number two is, when it comes to bookkeeping, there's a few critical things I think that have to be in place for you to be able to know what's going on financially. Number one, you have to have regular books every month. Every month. I don't know how many times we've talked to clients who said, yeah, my CPA does the books, and they, get them to me once a quarter, maybe, sometimes I hear once a year, twice a year at the most. And it's like, that doesn't work. Now, it works if all we're worried about is taxes. And if that's really the only reason we're doing our books, is to prepare for tax filing at the end of the year, the beginning of the year. But if we're going to use our books to understand what's going on with the business and make better business decisions, we got to be getting them every month, every single month. So that's key number one. Number two is, they have to be structured in a simple but effective way. Like, we have to have a simplified set of books, because if our books are overly complicated, we won't use them.
Yeah.
And we can't get strategy out of them because they make no sense to us. I remember getting so frustrated with my little hometown CPA because he would set up the books in ways that made no sense to me. I just didn't look at the business the way that he looked at them. You have to separate. We do bookkeeping for tax purposes, yes, but the other side of the coin is we do bookkeeping as a CEO or CFO of our business. And if they're not simplified, then they're not going to be effective. And so they have to be simple and effective, both.
Yeah.
So they got to be once a month. They got to be simple and effective. And then I think you've got to look at them, or you have to have somebody that's doing them that understands real estate. And when I see someone doing books that doesn't understand real estate, they're only looking at it from a tax perspective, and they typically aren't including what's called all of your, it's called your costs of goods sold. This is all the money that goes out to the broker, the agents, when they do a deal on your team, like your splits. If somebody gets paid at closing, your referrals to Zillow, if you're on Zillow Flex, or your referrals to HomeLight, or all these other referral companies, or outbound agents that send you inbound referrals. If we're not recording all of that data in your books, your cost of goods sold, we're missing the opportunity to understand truly what's going on in the business. And so those are the three things I think that when it comes to bookkeeping, that's where you got to start. Get them monthly, make sure they're simplified and you understand them, meaning they're effective, and that you're looking at them through the lens of a real estate business owner, not just a CPA or through the IRS lens. So that would be my answer, is what people should start with anyway.
I see that quite often, where we bring people on into stats and they haven't had their books done in a year because they just haven't even got back to their bookkeeper to even answer questions on their books. So important, because how are you going to know what your ROI is on anything, or how are you going to know what leads you should be spending on and not if you don't have books anywhere? So I like how you include outgoing referrals, right? Because I'm assuming at some point you want to know what's your ROI on these lead sources, or what should we be spending money on.
It'd be funny. You'd be interested to know that I just got wrapped up with all of our quarterly reviews with all of our clients. So every client, we do a quarterly review where we actually go through their books with me, and they get my thoughts on it. And what I love about that is really has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the fact that all I look at is real estate books. So I know what people are spending money on, where it's going, what's working, what's not. And so that's been a helpful resource, I think, for those quarterly calls. But specifically to the referrals you just mentioned, the referral costs. I just did a P&L review with a $10 million GCI company that we do books for.
Yeah.
One of the top teams in the United States. And we determined by looking at the number of outbound referrals that they're doing to third-party referral sources, is that an increase from 2023 to 2024, their deals being done by that have an outbound referral cost on them went up dramatically. All of a sudden, we noticed their net profit was down by a decent amount.
Yeah.
By a percentage, but they increased their top line revenue. They went from $8.5 to $10 million, but their net profit actually decreased. So we had to figure out why. And what we determined was a larger percent of their deals had this referral fee attached to it. So their cost of goods sold went up as a percentage of their revenue. So from a CEO's mind, I'm thinking, okay, guys, we got to shift from being too dependent on these third-party lead sources to being more disciplined around teaching our agents and holding our agents accountable to converting company-generated leads. Yes. Why? Because there's no fee attached to them. And as a company, their splits were different if the agent did an SOI deal versus a company-generated deal. Mm-hmm. So our profitability was around maintaining company-generated deals as a larger percentage of our total revenue. Mm-hmm. Those are all that's just one example of what we can understand about a business very quickly and easily that otherwise might have gone right over our head, and we're just scratching our heads as to why we're less profitable, even if our top line increased.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about bookkeeping.
That's huge, right? Because we're talking millions of dollars of, they're like, wow, our sales are up, yep, but we're making less money. So if we were not paying attention to our books, in theory, you're probably team lead or broker owner is probably hiring more or investing more in leads or spending more on marketing because they're thinking, well, we've sold X amount more houses, right? But truly they haven't. And if you're not keeping an eye on that on a regular basis, you'd have no idea.
Yeah, you really wouldn't. Or you would maybe be thinking that's the issue, but books oftentimes confirm what our gut is telling us. Mm-hmm. But then we can make confident decisions. So here's kind of what happened with that example is that they realized that the sales manager that they had hired was not doing a good job of keeping the agents accountable to company-generated deals and them learn how to convert those company-generated opportunities. So we went from bookkeeping to strategy around maybe we hired the wrong person or we aren't doing a good job of holding the sales manager accountable to metrics.
Yeah.
So they are holding the agents accountable. We were slipping around our accountability. And that's why the profit went down. And so now we can confidently go to the sales manager and say, look, we hired you. We didn't hold you accountable. We're going to start doing that, which means you need to hold the agents accountable. And so we're going to put things in place to make sure that's happening. Mm-hmm. All from. So yeah, that's the power.
Super powerful. I mean, or maybe the metrics are wrong. Maybe our goal setting, our metrics around wherever we're trying, whether it's Follow Up Boss, CSU or CT or whatever platform they're in, maybe we need to just tweak those metrics for the next quarter to gear them towards, company generated leads.
Yes, so, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many things you can glean from having the right numbers in place.
So powerful.
And really the right numbers, just so everybody's clear on kind of what I think needs to be included in your real estate business books. It's called your chart of accounts. It's basically how your books are structured is we've got to start with the true top line revenue. This is the dollar amount that gets paid. It's the true gross commission income. Mm-hmm. Before the broker touched anything, it's before the agents on our team got paid anything. If we're a solo agent, like I said, it's before our broker took their portion. It's the true top line. That is simple number one. It has to be the top line of our books. The second number then is that cost of goods sold, which is the amount that got paid out to the broker at closing, the agent that did deal with us, not the agent, but the agent on our team or in our brokerage, they're split.
Yeah.
Maybe if we have ISAs setting appointments and they get a 5 or 10% cut of it, maybe it's outbound referral sources, whatever it is, that's your cost of goods sold. That's number two. You got to have those two in your books. Then number three is the gross profit. That's what you have left. And then we look at operating expenses, actual costs of running the business. Mm-hmm. And then we look at our net profit, number 5. So we have total revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating expenses, and then net profit, what's left. Mm-hmm. I see so many books that only include the last 3.
Yeah.
They start with the gross profit, the amount that actually hit our bank account as the owner. and then operating expenses, and then net profit. And that's only half the equation. If we're overspending, that can tell us where we're overspending. That's fine. But what about if we have the wrong splits with our team? What about if we're at a broker that's charging too much? What about if too much of our business is dependent on these third-party lead sources? We have no idea unless we're tracking the costs of goods sold in our books and really looking at it regularly. So I think that's so, aside, step one is making sure you're looking at it from a CEO's mindset. And step two is making sure that those books have all 5 sections included in the bookkeeping so that you can, really understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's really important, because I see a lot of teams that they're like, well, I think I'm paying my broker too much money, but I've never checked. So they're going back and they're redoing all the numbers and they're pulling up commission demands or whatever. And if you just had that as a number that you're tracking, you can see where everything's going and make really good business decisions. I think that's
absolutely. And here's the thing when it comes to brokerages, it's like, I think it was Tony Robbins that said, price is only an issue in the absence of value. And so sometimes I see brokerages that are very expensive. We have several agents in New York City, Manhattan area, and they work with brokerages who are just different. It's just different. It's a different world, really, when it comes to real estate. And the brokerage model is different in Manhattan. And so all over, really. And so, their broker costs are very high compared to other parts of the country and different brokerages. But when we look at the value that broker brings, it makes sense, because now we don't have to spend as much money in operating expenses. We might be spending more on a broker. And cost of goods sold might be higher. But now I don't got to pay for marketing. I don't got to pay for an office space. I don't got to pay for these things. So it's, again, if we don't know what the cost is in our cost of goods sold to our broker, we can't compare cost and value. We have no idea. And that's where, again, bookkeeping, financial reporting for beginners, no matter what business you're in, is all about moving forward with confidence and making business decisions confidently versus, well, my gut tells me it's too expensive, or my gut tells me I have money to add this lead source because my bank account has money in it this month. That is a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, people are finding out right now, as the market has shifted over the last few years. And really now with the NAR stuff, like, people are like, oh man, I'm nervous. No nervousness for people who understand the model and are running it, correctly. So
yeah, that's hard for me when they're like, okay, I've got to wait for the closing to make this decision and sign up or do this thing. And I'm like, you're waiting for one closing to do this thing. That makes me nervous, right? Are you making a confident business decision, or are you just looking at like your bank balance for that exact second?
Right. There you go. That's what they're doing. And I get it. I was there for years in my real estate team. And for me, it was like, I'm going to exit business, because I was doing, at that time, I was doing 100 deals personally. I was just grinding every month. I had a wife and 2 kids at home at the time. We have 4 now. And I'm just like, this is not a scalable thing. I had a couple buyer's agents and a couple admin at the time, really trying to figure out the team thing. And it was like one month I'd go to the team and be like, hey guys, guess what? Be really careful how many copies you use and how many prints you do, because I'm running short on cash and I got to go do 5 more deals to kind of keep this thing floating. It was an absolute mess. But once I understood the model I was running and then could look at my books every month and know if I was on or off track, it all that stress, and not all of it. Of course, there's still going to be stress, but it sure helped in making better business decisions. You had kind of asked earlier, what should agents, team leaders, and brokers do to kind of help themselves in this area? I think bookkeeping is definitely one of the areas, but the only issue with bookkeeping is we're always looking backwards. It's like, we're looking in the rear mirror. We also got to be looking forward. And there's 2 things I think that they have to be doing or be clear on in order to be moving in the right direction, aside from bookkeeping and looking backwards. Number 1 is system. I'm a huge fan of Profit First. For those that haven't heard of it, Mike Michalowicz, we were Profit First professionals, because implementing that system in your business, to me, is an absolute must. We have systems when we take a new listing. We have a system. We take in the stuff, we do the things, have our admin do this, that, and the other thing. We order the sign, we get we have a system. But oftentimes we don't for when a dollar comes into our business. And so I'm a huge believer that, yes, we got to be looking backwards and looking at the books, but we also have to have a place that when a dollar comes in, it's already predetermined where that money goes.
Yeah.
We're saving for we're putting money in profit at a predetermined percentage. We're putting money in a tax account at a predetermined percentage. Then we put money in an owner pay account to make sure we have a regular salary so we can live a normal life. Then a certain percentage goes into the operating account last, and whatever's in that operating account, we get to spend on the business. But if it's not in there, we don't spend it. The problem is too many agents see how much money's in their bank account and they don't pre-plan for taxes, for profit, for salary for themselves, and they spend all their money. And guess what? Now we're stuck back selling real estate again just to pay for the business and so that our spouses or our family at home doesn't have no money.
Yeah.
And that's just, oh man, I just feel for people that are stuck in that place, especially because it doesn't have to be that way. So number one, they got to have a system for profit. And then number two is they got to be clear on the model that they are running in their business. What do I mean by that? Okay, here's what I mean by that. There are different models when it comes to a real estate business. One is a solo agent, right? Solo agent, very few expenses, probably mostly staff because you're leveraged with a staff person and you're just out grinding doing deals. High profitability, but it's all on you to do.
Yeah.
That's nothing wrong with it. For some people, that's a great model. Perfect. Number two model is what I call shark and feeder fish, where you have a lead agent who's kind of like the solo agent, super busy, doesn't spend a lot of money on stuff, mostly works with past client in their sphere of influence, but they got more deals than they can handle. So they bring on a couple agents. And kind of like those feeder fish on shark. The shark's out there swimming. They're the big fish in the ocean. They eat the food, but the little guys get the leftover.
Yeah.
And there's agents in every office like that. They have a couple agents. They're really not on their team, but they kind of are. And they just feed them leftovers of deals that they don't want to do. That model's fine, but you're going to have a different economic model for that model than maybe the next model, which is what I call the school of fish model, where it's a fish. Maybe it's 10 agents, maybe it's 50. It doesn't really matter. But we're all doing the same thing. We all have the same branding. We all have the same systems. We all use the same processes. And when one of us one direction, you imagine a school of fish in the bottom of the ocean, they all turn together.
Yeah.
They're doing it together. And that's a team model. And that economic model is going to be totally different. So what I see people make the mistake of is they'll be running a solo, they'll be running one model, like maybe a shark with feeder fish model, but they have the economic model of a big team, meaning they're spending like a big team, or they have splits with their agents like a big team. And it doesn't work. You have to have the same model and understand the economic model. They have to match.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, outside of having a system for profit first, and making sure economic model and your team model match.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. If you don't have those are the two things that will keep you in production forever, unless you get those two things right. So I think that's really something that people got to be thinking about when they're shifting from solo agent to deciding what kind of team they're going to build.
Such good information, because I think you looking forward and backward, you can make such confident decisions, right? You can see, do I need to change splits? Do I need to change my model? Am I overspending? And then I would imagine working with you, you kind of can see that, right? You're like, wow, you sell a lot of real estate, but your expenses are really high. Let's figure out why, right? And kind of advise them.
Absolutely. That's part of our quarterly calls when we first sign up with a client. It's all about what model are you running? And are you what model do you want to build? Begin with the end in mind. Like, what do you want this to look like? Are you trying to exit production one day and run a team? Do you just want to be a solo high producing agent? What model are you running? And then is your current economic model matching?
Yeah.
Because if it's not, we got to fix it, because otherwise it's not going to work. So it's just so important. And then making sure we're looking at it from an ongoing basis. And again, I think that's why our business has grown as quickly as it has over the last 4 years that we started, because people realize that their current bookkeeper just doesn't understand the nuances and just the big picture of this real estate business. And they can't simplify it into, here's what you need to do this quarter to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And so I think that our sweet spot right now anyway is just being really the only bookkeeper I know that is, we've done it. I've built a real estate business where I was able to exit production and run it like a business. And that's been fun to be able to bring to other people.
Awesome. Well, this has been some great tips. I'm going to pivot real quick before we wrap up. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think your superpower is?
My superpower, I think my wife has told me this before, and so have other clients in the past, that is my ability to simplify.
Mm.
It's probably because I'm not a highly educated person. I've learned I drove limousine before I got into real estate. Like I have no business except for the fact that I've gone through the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm grateful for that because of who it's made me, not only as a business person, but as a father and a husband and all of these things. But, my ability to look at something and say, I don't want to overthink it. I want life to be simple. And we've just taken that and applied it towards real estate financials. So the ability to simplify is my superpower.
That's amazing. That's a great superpower to have, because working with realtors or being a realtor, they don't want to see the crazy books. They don't want to see this long, complicated thing.
Right.
They just want to see, like, am I making money? What do we need to do? Make a decision, go. So great superpower to have. If any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more, where's the best place to send them?
Yeah, probably just our website. There's a bunch of info on there on a vlog that I have of different things I've taught about, and then just they can get a quote if they want to look at what it would cost us to do their books. And I will say what I love about our business is we've really structured in a way where we can charge the same or less than just a typical basic bookkeeper,
Mm-hmm.
but we can do it with a real estate mindset. And so they can get a quote there, but it's simple-numbers.com. It's important they put the dash, simple-numbers.com.
Perfect. And I'll drop all that in the show notes. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been just a wealth of knowledge, and we'll see you again soon.
Yep. Thanks much. Talk later.
Bye.